The PodcastCoug Season 2, Episode 10.
You're listening to the PodcastCoug Radio Network with your host, James Laurie. The PodcastCoug is your weekly Coug On Demand show featuring all things Cougs and Washington State Cougar football. And now, here is your host, PodcastCoug.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the PodcastCoug. I am James Laurie, the PodcastCoug, and you are listening to the PodcastCoug as we're doing all things Cougar football, 30 minutes of Coug Talk, where we talk about our previous game against Arizona and our upcoming Dad's Weekend game against the Stanford Cardinal. All right, here we go. Well, so obviously we're talking about Luke versus Hilinski. A lot of that subjects floating around in the media. And, of course, Stanford, Luke is starting on senior day. Okay, that's just a no-brainer, right? We're going to respect him and honor. Everything is done for the school, all the records. You saw that press conference. Did you see that press conference with Mike Leach and that San Francisco reporter? Mike was short with him. The reporter asked, hey, why were you 40 minutes late? And Mike said, I had obligations, right? We're busy up north. And the reporter said, okay, well, hey, Luke, is Luke Falk starting? And he said, well, I'm not the one who was 40 minutes late. You must have been late. That was the first question that I answered. So he kind of put him down, kind of trashed him a little bit. But then the reporter asked, hey, Mike, what's the deal about Pirates and football? Can you tell me a little bit about that? Now, for the umpteenth time, how many times have we heard Mike Leach talk about Pirates, right? I mean, how many dozens of times reporters and press conferences, it's funny, he didn't even talk about the treasure. It's all about the treasure, but he went on for about 7 or 8 minutes on a dissertation about Pirates and football. Amazing. So he kind of put down the reporter for not being there on the opening question on who's starting quarterback against Stanford. And then he goes on for 7 or 8 minutes. Very kind, actually, but really interesting. So that was a press conference that happened this week. So anyway, we all know that Luke has not been himself for the past, he hasn't been his self lately. And for the past year and a half, really it's just not been the same except for the USC game. He played well. And, all year long, though, Luke has not been the same. It took, remember, it took benching him off the Boise game, putting in Hilinski, who took over and won the game. Luke just holds on to the ball too long, right? I mean, that's the problem. Everybody's talking about this. Luke holding on the ball. Guys are calling him Zombie Coug on our message board, Wazoo Watch. And it's really interesting. He overanalyzing. He's overanalyzing. And I think Leach wants a guy in there that's going to move the ball quickly downfield, even if you sacrifice a few picks, a few interceptions. And Hilinski can clearly execute this and execute that and move the ball. So here's the big question. Why all of a sudden do receivers get wide open for Hilinski? When Hilinski's in, when Tyler's in, why all of a sudden are these receivers open? All of a sudden, big plays are made. No dink and dunks, big plays, big catches. Why are these receivers getting open, and why not for Luke? And we don't know that. If we have the spider cam and look at the video from the spider cam, we might be able to see that, but we really don't know, and that's the problem. The question is, why is he holding on the ball too long? Why is he zombie? Why hasn't he been himself for the past year and a half, except for USC and a few other games? He played pretty good in Oregon, but why are the receivers getting open for Tyler and not for Luke? Does the offense prefer to play for Hilinski? So very interesting. Anyway, let's talk about last Saturday, Arizona. Of course, the Cougs lost their second consecutive road game. This time it was 58-37 to Arizona, the hottest team around. Now, I had said on the last podcast, Coug, that I was deeply concerned about the Arizona game. And I can't overemphasize how amazing Khalil Tate is. But for the second time in 3 weeks, Washington State suffered a disappointing road letdown. And, here are some of the takeaways that I got on the loss. Zona quarterback Khalil Tate is the real deal. This guy is amazing. Now, the media, everybody's talking about our loss and what we did wrong and how can we do better. Hey, what about Tate, man? Tate is phenomenal, all right? Yeah, we've got a couple of good quarterbacks. I would say Luke is up there. We've been saying he's the best in the Pac-12 all year long, and Holinsky is ready to go, especially for next fall. The guy's ready to execute, but hey, I'm telling you, man, nobody's talking about Tate. They're talking a little bit about Tate, but Tate is the real deal. He's making Pac-12 history. All right? To think about Leach that made Khalil Tate an offer, and so did about 15 other schools, but nobody for a quarterback. Leach wanted him as a safety. The guy's obviously quick, but my goodness, Rich Rod, and I guess that's why they pay Rich Rod the big bucks. I mean, you saw it last week. Biggest salary in the Pac-12 is Rich Rod at $6 million a year. That's twice. That's double the average of the Pac-12 coaches at about $3 million. Okay, $6 million a year. Are you kidding me? And last year, Rich Rod and Zona was 3-9. They were 3-9, and they were calling for his head. And Rich puts in Khalil Tate as a quarterback who played quarterback in high school. The guy is phenomenal. I mean, we're talking not only dual threat, but the best there is. You're talking the level of Michael Jordan. Who's that? The other basketball player. I mean, there's a couple of guys. There's Tiger Woods. I mean, these are elite guys that are just elite in their field, the John Lennons of the world. I mean, this guy is phenomenal. I don't think anybody can stop him. I don't think SC is going to stop him. I'm wondering if the Huskies played. Now, I was going to mention the Huskies they're not playing Arizona this year, nor they're playing USC. And I don't think anybody's going to stop them. I think the only body that can stop Khalil Tate is Alabama. And you're saying, well, just one guy? Yeah, one guy, and a pretty good team. Their defense isn't the best, but I can go on and on about Khalil Tate. He is the real deal, and I can't stop talking about him. 2 days after the loss, Tate became the first player in Pac-12 history to win the conference's Offensive Player of the Week award. That's 4 weeks in a row. 4 weeks in a row. We're talking about a level that's never been seen before. The guy is amazing, okay? Tate generated 421 offensive yards and 3 touchdowns against the Cougs. That included a career-long 82-yard run, 49-yard touchdown run, and 4 passes and 40 more yards. So, wow. It was just, once again, our team collapsed. Washington State outgained the Wildcats on offense, putting up 646 yards. Arizona had 585, but that wasn't enough. Cougs are now 7-2, of course, ranked number 25. We're at the bottom, number 25. Funny how Stanford is number 18 and we're 25, and we're favored against the Cardinal on Saturday. Anyway, suddenly the season looks a lot different than it did when the Cougs were 5-0 with the upset win against SC, right? Stanford, Utah, and obviously the Huskies are not going to be a cakewalk. And everybody's confident about that Stanford, that we're going to beat Stanford. I don't know that. I mean, we'll talk about Stanford on the second half of the second half of the segment here on the podcast Coug. But I think they've won. We've only beat Stanford once when Mike, in the last 6 years. So anyway, does Washington State, do we have a quarterback controversy? I don't think so. Luke opened up the game with 13 of 23 for 93 yards. He had a 1-yard touchdown pass to Isaiah Johnson-Mack in the first quarter, but other than that, the offense sputtered, and they were going 3 and out 4 times and going 1 of 8 on third down conversions. So, with 2.5 minutes left on the clock in the first half, Leach benched Luke for Hilinski, and just like he did on the Boise game. And I don't blame him. You're there to win, right? Not to break records, but to win the game. Now, Luke, mind you, last week became the winningest quarterback in Washington State history, achieving his 25th win against Colorado to blow past Jason Gester's, that had 24. And Luke might, by the end of the season, own every single Pac-12 passing record. But he was benched against Zona for the second time this season. Zombie Luke. I mean, he's just not the same. I don't know if it was a concussion. I don't know if he has a problem with thinking he cannot throw a pick. He has to be so accurate. Nobody really knows. But why is he holding on to the ball? Nobody really knows. So Leach said he wanted to give Luke a chance to analyze the game from the sideline. That's a nice way of saying that this is why you're getting benched, but that's a politically correct way of saying it to the media. But, of course, Luke never re-entered the game. And not even after Tyler's 4th interception, Leach stuck with Tyler Hilinski, and he finished 45 of 61 for 509 passing yards, 4 picks. That's right, 4 picks, 2 passing touchdowns, and 2 rushing scores, all career highs. But if you think about it, if you're gonna execute and be on air raid, you're gonna throw picks. If you're gonna hold on the ball and be mentally, if you're just going to hold on to it and you're not going to march down the field. But if you're going to just march and march and march and blow past people, you're going to throw some picks. All right. Granted, one was in the end zone, which was horrible. 2 out of those 4 picks from Hilinski weren't that bad. The other 2 were just pretty much unacceptable. But Hilinski clearly has the arm and the talent, and obviously it's going to be a great, beautiful transition in the role next fall when the Cougs start the season in 2018. So he sparked the offense again, and literally instantly, when he walked on the field, and I mean instantly, when Tyler walked on the field, he sparked the team. All of a sudden, the receivers are open. Instantly. He went for 7 of 8, 69 yards in his first drive, and scrambling for his first career rushing touchdown on a 6-yard score. Good for Tyler, running into the end zone. That was great. But Hilinski's inexperience showed against Zona. 3 of the 4 picks came off risky throws, and the defense read it and got in front of him. Still, you can't argue about his production. He engineered back-to-back offensive drives in the third quarter to give Washington State its first lead of the game. Third quarter, we were up, had the lead with 8 minutes left, and then Hilinski connected with Tate Martin for an 8-yard pass touchdown, then scored his second rushing touchdown of the night with a 1-yard scramble. So, but at this point, Hilinski, like a high-risk, high-reward play. That's what he's like, right? Remember, he led the Cougs to the comeback, like I said, against Boise. But his turnovers against Zona didn't help, right? So Luke certainly has a couple of rough games. He followed up with his 5 interception nightmares against Cal and an okay outing against Colorado in the hard rain, and was ineffective in the first quarter of the Arizona game. I'm talking about Luke now. So what happens next? Stick with Luke until he falters. Period. I mean, that's what you do. You stick with Luke. It's a senior day. It's a no-brainer. His mom's going to be there. Annalise, great family. Who knows if his sisters are going to be there, but he's got his family going to be at the last home game. Luke deserves all of it. I mean, he's a great Coug. He's going to be a great Coug and a donor. He'll be a donor for life. So we're going to stick with Luke until he falters. And then if he falters again, it's Tyler. So let him continue to break records and, But, we got to have the best quarterback in the game to win. I don't care if it's Stanford or Utah, even the Huskies. So, yeah, start Luke on senior day, period, and And so here we are. Now, Khalil Tate, back to Tate. He's 4-0 in the Pac-12 ever since he started. If you remember, the Arizona with Rich Rod started Brandon Dawkins, and Brandon just was ineffective. So Tate's only played 4 games and has won 4 games in a row. It's the hottest team in the Pac-12 with the trend. And, like I said, a 4 Offensive Player of the Week award. Wow. In a season that started, everybody was talking about, Sam Darnold from USC or Josh Rosen from UCLA, Luke Falk, and Jake Browning. Everybody was talking. That was the conversation to the quarterbacks, right? Nobody was talking about Khalil Tate. Of course not. So Arizona's quarterback is he's the most unstoppable. I think he's the most amazing player in college football. Now, I don't know. I don't study every single team in the United States, right, in college football. For the Pac-12, I think he's the most amazing player totally. And you guys, you just wait. You wait for the next 3 weeks. He is going to, I think they're going to run the table. I think Arizona is going to win out. And I think they're going to play the Huskies in the Pac-12, in the Pac-12 championship game. I mean, as simple as that. Now, I don't know if the Huskies are going to beat him. I mean, this is a one-guy deal. It's amazing. I mean, you would never think that a one-dimensional team can beat. Now, I don't think they can beat Alabama, okay? But the guy is just amazing with talent and greatness and unstoppable. So, and if he doesn't, he'll throw right over you. If you put 5 in a box, he's going to throw right over you. So you can't, and he's very accurate with passing. The guy, it's not like he's a mediocre passer. I mean, you saw that Arizona. You saw his receptions, his throws. So if he doesn't get you on the air, he's going to get you on the ground. Okay, and you might stop him a few times. Fine, but you're not going to stop him every time. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. So Tate has accounted for. We should title this podcast Khalil Tate. Are you kidding me? Nobody's talking about him. Everybody's down on the Cougs for losing. I'm saying, guys, Khalil Tate is the biggest and best in the Pac-12 right now. One guy, and I'm not stopping talking about him. He's accounted for 1,600 offensive yards, 14 touchdowns in 4 games. That's right, 4 games. All right, nobody's going to stop this guy. I don't know if the Huskies have the best defense. I don't know. We're going to see when they meet in the Pac-12 championship. Certainly, the Huskies, like I said, they don't play Arizona or USC this year, and they're what a week. I mean, they've lucked out on such a schedule like that. So initially, it looked like Grinch might have figured out a way to slow down Tate. Our defense, bottled him up in the first quarter, holding him to 16 yards with 6 rush attempts. Then, Zona uncorked it, and Tate blew us away. If it was, like I said, if it wasn't on the ground, he would load up the box and Tate would throw right over the head, right in the middle. He's accurate and he's the best. 4 games. Are you kidding me? He's a weapon, and frankly, I think he's unstoppable, unless you're Alabama. Okay, so Cougs defense seems so concerned with trying to stop Tate's athletic ability on so many occasions that they overcommitted at the line of scrimmage. As a result, they gave up chunk yardage up in the middle. And of course, on the pass via running back J.J. Taylor. Taylor scored 2 rushing touchdowns, including a 79-yard breakaway score in the third quarter. Then tight end Jamie Nunley scored on a 48-yard catch. Again, a throw, and a run early, and Tate had an 82-yard run that almost resulted in a TD. Of course, Jalen Thompson, last-ditch effort, tackled Tate on the 5-yard line and kept Tate out of the end zone. So Khalil completed 10 out of 17 passes for 275 yards and 2 passing scores to go with his 146 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown. All right. So again, Tate is now 4-0 as the starting quarterback for Arizona, and played. He's going to play in the Pac-12 South. That's simple as that. Wildcats are 6-2. Their only losses were Utah, where Brandon Dawkins Dawkins was the quarterback, not Tate. So, there you go. So remember, and I've said this before, UW doesn't play Arizona or USC. They are lucky, right? So, all right. Well, enough about Khalil Tate. Enough about him. Listen, we're going to come back and talk about Stanford. We're going to be right back with the Stanford Cardinal right here on the Podcast Coug.
Hey, Coug fans. You're podcasting with James Laurie and the Podcast Coug Radio Network. The Podcast Coug is your weekly Coug on Demand show featuring all things Cougar football in Washington State. To help you get through the week, hit the subscribe button or check us out on iTunes, the App Store, iOS, Google Play, Stitcher, or at podcastcoug.com.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Podcast Coug. I am James Laurie, the Podcast Coug, and we're on the second part of the segment of the Podcast Coug, and we're talking about Stanford, number 25, Washington State, 7-2, against the Cardinal, number 18 at 6-2. Isn't that interesting? They're ranked 18, and we're 25, and we've got a 3-point. Cougs are favored by 3 points. Interesting. Saturday at Martin, 12:30 on Big Fox. Weather's going to be chilly. If you're going, make sure you bring warm weather. It's going to be chilly. A little bit of snow is in the forecast. Nothing that's going to stick, but it is cold weather material and might even be a chance of showers as well. Like I said, Cougs favored by 3. Last meeting, Washington State won 42-16 last season at Stanford, right? Luke throwing 357 yards and 4 touchdowns. David Shaw, his 7th year, Stanford head coach. Shaw, once again, has the Cardinal contending for the Pac-12 North title. They played quietly on its way to a 10-3 record and a Sun Bowl win over North Carolina last year in his 7th season. Now, this is interesting. Stanford has only once have they finished with fewer than 10 wins. Are you kidding me? Only once in David Shaw's reign has Stanford finished fewer than 10 wins. So Shaw picked up his 70th career win as the coach last week's on that victory against Oregon State, and holds a 5-1 record against Washington State during his tenure as the Cardinal head coach, right? So Washington State's only win against Shaw came last season when the Cougs again won 42-16. Stanford's only loss has been USC and San Diego State. They almost lost to the Beavs. Did you see that? If it wasn't been for that fumble at the end of the fourth quarter, the Beavs beaved it. They beaved it. Love their new interim coach, by the way, at Oregon State, Corey Hall. Forget Neuheisel and all these guys. I'm telling you, I hope they hire Corey Hall. Did you see that game, the Oregon State in Corvallis against Stanford? Are you kidding me? Oregon State was going to win that game. They were going to win. That interim coach, had them jacked up so much. They love playing for him. That guy is an amazing coach. Hire him, okay? Yeah, he's coming from a nothing salary, and he's going to end up being a millionaire overnight, but hire the guy. Hire him. He's what the Beavers need. And they're playing for him, right? So, they were just jacked up. Oregon State was just jacked up. And like I said, Corey Hall should be their next head coach. So, and there's a petition being signed around by the players to promote Corey. I think that's great. And if you saw that game, that Oregon State Cardinal game, like I said, he was full of energy. The team just was jacked up. So what a shame that they fumbled, like, I don't know how many seconds left, or a minute left, and they fumbled the ball and gave Stanford the win. Oh, Stanford played horrible in that game against Oregon State. I don't think they showed up. It's like, we're gonna show up and beat Oregon State, right? It was one of those trap games, and David Shaw is so lucky to come out of that game as a winner. And as a result, they've only lost twice this year: San Diego State and USC. So, Bryce Love, did you pick up the press conference from Leach? Who's the best running back in the Pac-12, and he actually gave his nod to Oregon State and not to Stanford. But I'll tell you, Bryce Love, he's been out injured for the last game, but after backing up Christian McCaffrey for 2 years, Love is enjoying a breakout season his junior year. And, he's been talked about Heisman Trophy candidate contention. Although, like I said, Leach disagrees. Despite last week's Oregon State, he was out with an ankle injury. Love leads the nation with almost 1,400 rushing yards and is averaging about 200 rushing yards a game. So 11 touchdowns. He's Stanford's biggest weapon, their biggest offensive threat. All right, so watch out for Bryce Love. He is going to play. He will play on Saturday, okay? So watch out. Bryce Love, 200 yards a game he's averaging. Are you kidding me? 1,400 for the year. Wide receiver, J.J. Whiteside. Now, he's their best receiver. 6'3", really big target. Has a team high of 5 touchdowns. Whiteside. He missed the Utah and the Oregon games with an injury, but returned. He was last week. He played at Oregon State. He caught 3 balls for 30 yards and a touchdown. Defensive tackle Harrison Phillips. The Cougs' offensive line is going to have their hands full against Harrison Phillips. He's a senior, and he's their most effective pass rusher. He's tall. He's 6'4". He's big enough. He's tall, like I said. He's big enough for the capability to get around double teaming. So when guys double team him, he just gets around him. He leads Stanford with 7 tackles for a loss, 3.5 sacks, and 4 quarterback hurries. So, Phillips also recovered the game-winning fumble late in the fourth quarter against Oregon State last week and allowed that Stanford to score on that offensive scoring, that touchdown. So, it was Phillips that recovered that fumble at the last minute of the game. So, Stanford, not too concerned about Stanford, although I am, of course, about Bryce Love. So it will be interesting. Their quarterback isn't, terribly, he's nothing. I'm not really concerned about Stanford. Utah, not concerned. Huskies, yes, yeah. Be a miracle. It'd be definitely a football god thing if we beat the Huskies in the Apple Cup. Speaking about AC, the Apple Cup, 115 years. The 115th AC is coming up, and it's the Apple Cup party in Seattle. You can join all the Coug fans November 24th at the Bell Harbor Conference Center, right, for the Apple Cup rally. It's been a few years since they've had a rally in Seattle. That's out near the waterfront in downtown Seattle, and it's the first time in a long time. They used to have it there years ago for the Apple Cup rally in Seattle. So you can, register now. If you didn't get that email from the Cougs, you can find it on their website. You should have gotten, if you're a CAF member, you've got the email. You get a discount, hors d'oeuvres and a drink ticket, and of course everybody's going to be there. Bookie for gear, Butch, the band, cheerleaders. It's $20 if you're a CAF member. It's $10 for your kid. 13 to 20 years old, $10. So. Should be fun for the AC party on Friday night, the 24th at the Bell Harbor Conference Center. Although we're going to lose that game. Sorry about that. We're going to lose to the Huskies, and who knows? I mean, just anybody can, who knows, right? So anyway, here we are. It's homecoming. It's Dad's Weekend, and Seth Meyers is the Dad's Weekend entertainment at Beasley for. Is it Friday night or Saturday night? He is I think it's Friday night. Yeah, Seth Meyers. He follows Jimmy Fallon on the Tonight Show. So that is the entertainment for Dad's Weekend. That's about it for the Podcast Coug. We're going to catch you next week. Until then, have a great Saturday afternoon and go Cougs.
You've been listening to the Podcast Coug Radio Network with your host, James Laurie. The Podcast Coug is your weekly Coug On Demand show featuring all things Cougs and Washington State Cougar football. This has been a presentation of the Podcast Coug Radio Network. Find us at podcastcoug.com.